Hey everyone, Robert Dugan here from RAD Potential, and welcome to a brand new podcast episode. Today, we're diving into how to hire to the key traits of top performing salespeople. Our AI-driven hosts, Ava and Max, are ready to unpack the latest research and insights from RAD Potential Advisory. You're going to love this one. Enjoy the show.
Okay, so we've got some interesting stuff to dig into today. You shared this material from RAD Potential Advisory, all about how to hire really great salespeople.
Yeah, it looks super in-depth.
So we're gonna really get into it and see if we can figure out, what makes these top salespeople tick, and more importantly, how companies can put together a system to find them and bring them on board.
Sounds like a plan. And RAD Potential Advisory seems to have some serious experience in this area.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
They say they've helped, wait for it, over 270 companies hire successful salespeople. And they're saying, they're seeing big returns on investment.
270 companies. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So they must be doing something right.
Right. And their whole thing is built around this idea of a sales DNA. Like, they really believe that the best salespeople, it's not just luck or charm. They've got this specific set of characteristics that really makes them stand out.
Interesting. It makes sense.
Yeah.
There has to be something more to it than just being a smooth talker.
Exactly. So let's break down what they're talking about here. The first thing they emphasize, it's this idea of an enterprising nature. So what do they actually mean by that when you're looking at a potential salesperson?
Well, it's more than just being able to, handle a flexible work environment.
Right.
They're saying that these top performers, they're the ones who are actively looking for ways to make things better. They see a process that's inefficient or maybe a strategy that's a bit outdated, and they speak up. They suggest improvements, even if it's not strictly part of their job description.
But they're not just following the script. They're thinking ahead.
Exactly. They're not just executing. They're always looking for ways to innovate, to build upon what's already there. This outside-the-box thinking, it's not just a cliche for them. It's something they actually do.
I like that. It's proactive. It's about taking initiative. And that kind of ties into the next trait they talk about, which is this competitive spirit.
Right. And we know, a lot of salespeople are competitive by nature.
Oh, yeah. It kind of comes with the territory.
But RAD Potential Advisory, they're pointing to something a bit deeper here. They're saying it's not just about beating other people. It's also about, this really strong drive for self-improvement.
Interesting.
They're constantly pushing themselves. They want to be better today than they were yesterday. And this internal drive, it fuels everything they do in business development. They set these ambitious goals, and they're relentless about reaching them.
So it's not just external competition, it's internal too. It's like they're competing with themselves to be better.
Exactly. It's like they have this internal scoreboard that's just as important as the external one.
I get it. Now, the next one they highlight, it's this achievement drive, and they actually link this to a sense of impatience.
Impatience.
Yeah, which seems a little counterintuitive because sales is often about building relationships, and that takes time.
Yeah, it does. So how does impatience fit into the picture?
Well, that's the thing. They're not saying it's about rushing clients or cutting corners. It's more about having this urgency to keep things moving forward.
Yeah.
These top performers, they need to see progress. They need to see results.
Makes sense.
But, and this is a big but RAD Potential Advisory, stresses that this drive, it's got to be balanced with a real commitment to service and building relationships.
Right. They can't just be all about closing the deal.
Exactly. They get that long-term success. It depends on having those strong connections with clients and, really delivering value. They want to close deals, yes, but not at the expense of trust.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance between drive and building genuine relationships.
Right. So it's like a focused sense of urgency without, sacrificing the client relationship. Right. Now, the last trait they really emphasize is objection handling. And this is where a lot of salespeople, they kind of get tripped up.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. Objections can be tough.
Totally. So what do these top performers, what do they do differently when they're faced with objections?
Well, RAD Potential Advisory, they say the best salespeople, they don't see objections as roadblocks. They see them as opportunities.
Opportunities.
Yeah, to really explain the value of what they're selling. They actually kind of enjoy it, the challenge of addressing concerns and showing how their product or service, how it can really meet the client's needs.
So it's like they're not afraid of those tough questions.
Not at all. They actually embrace them. They see it as a way to build even stronger trust and ultimately to close the deal.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like a mindset shift.
It is. It's about seeing objections as a chance to dive deeper.
So we've got these 4 key traits, right? We've got this proactive, innovative, enterprising nature. We've got the competitive spirit with a focus on self-improvement. We've got that achievement drive balanced with a client-centric approach. And then we've got this whole idea of seeing objections as opportunities. But the question is, how do you actually spot these traits in someone you're thinking about hiring?
Right? How do you know if they really have what it takes? And that's where RAD Potential Advisory brings up the idea of actually measuring these things.
Okay, so how do they suggest doing that?
They're big advocates for pre-employment assessments. Specifically, they have this system they've developed, the Fails DNA Predictor.
Catchy name.
It is. And the idea is to go beyond those subjective impressions you get from an interview, using data to actually see if those key traits are present.
So it's about getting some hard data to back up your gut feeling.
Exactly. They're not saying ditch the interviews, but they're saying add this extra layer of objective measurement.
Okay, so what are the specific benefits they highlight for, actually using these assessments in your hiring process?
They talk about 2 main benefits. The first one is validation of intuition. Like, you interview someone, you get a feeling about them, right?
Right.
The assessment can either back that up or, maybe give you a different perspective, so you can feel more confident in your decision.
Okay, so it's like a second opinion.
It is. And then the second benefit, which might be even more important, is that it can actually challenge your intuition.
How so?
Well, the assessment might reveal strengths or weaknesses that you didn't even pick up on in the interview.
So it's like it's showing you things you might have missed.
Exactly. And then, based on that, you can ask more specific questions. You can explore certain areas more deeply.
So it's not about replacing human judgment. It's about, refining it.
Absolutely. It's about making those decisions with more information. And RAD Potential Advisory, they also talk about creating a company-specific benchmark for success.
Okay, so it's not just a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Nope. They say that if you really want to find top salespeople for your company, you need to figure out what traits actually lead to success in your specific environment.
That makes sense. What works for one company might not work for another.
Exactly. So they have this whole process for figuring that out. It's all part of their Sales DNA Predictor system.
Okay, so walk me through it. How do they help companies establish this customized benchmark?
Well, they break it down into 4 steps. The first step is to assess your top and bottom performers. So you pick a group of people in your company, ideally like 10 to 20 people.
Right.
And these are the folks who are either consistently exceeding expectations or, consistently underperforming.
So you want to see the difference between the best and the, not so best.
Exactly. You need that contrast to figure out what really sets the top performers apart. Then the second step is to analyze the performance data.
So this is where the company has to do some work, right?
Right. You need to give RAD Potential Advisory the actual sales numbers, the metrics for that same group of people over the past year.
So they're not just looking at personality traits, they're looking at real results.
Exactly. They want to connect those assessment results to actual business outcomes.
Makes sense. So what happens next?
All right, so step 3 is where RAD Potential Advisory takes over and does a deep dive into the data. They call this their study phase.
The study phase. Okay.
Yeah. They take all that assessment data, all those performance metrics, and they do some serious number crunching. They're looking for the traits that really distinguish your top performers from the bottom performers. Basically, they're figuring out what the sales DNA of success looks like in your company.
So it's like they're cracking the code for what works in your specific environment.
Exactly. And then the final step, they take all that analysis and they create a customized hiring model just for your company.
Okay, so this is where it all comes together.
Yeah, this model, it highlights the exact combination of traits that are like the hallmarks of your top salespeople. So when you're evaluating new candidates, you're measuring them against the people who are already killing it in your company.
So it's not just about finding a good salesperson in general. It's about finding someone who's going to be a good fit for your specific company.
Right. It's about replicating the success you already have. By focusing on those specific traits, you make the hiring process way more predictable.
It's like you're stacking the deck in your favor.
Exactly. Okay, so let's recap. RAD Potential Advisory's approach. It all starts with understanding those key traits. The proactive mindset, the competitive drive, the results-oriented approach, and the whole idea of embracing objections.
Right. And then you've got to actually measure those traits using assessments. And the most important part is creating that company-specific benchmark by looking at your own top performers.
That's a great summary. It's about making smarter hiring decisions based on data, not just gut feelings.
It's been a really interesting deep dive learning about RAD Potential Advisory's methodology. They make a strong case for a more, I guess you could say, scientific approach to building a sales team.
They do. It really challenges you to think about how you're hiring.
It does, and it raises a really interesting question. What if you could really understand the sales DNA of your own top performers? I mean, what kind of impact could that have on your company's growth and efficiency?
That's a great question. Just imagine if you could consistently find and hire people who have that same drive, that same set of skills.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
So if you're intrigued by this and you want to learn more about how RAD Potential Advisory could help your company, they can be reached at 289-802-6332, or you can shoot them an email at service@radpotential.com. It could be the key to taking your sales team to the next level.
Absolutely. It's worth exploring.
It really is. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See you then.